There is a new interview with director Christopher Nolan for the Odyssey, thanks to a newly published article with a filmmaker for the New York Times. The director talks about his challenges, his inspirations for the film, and also gives us a few new details surrounding the filming. There's also been a casting update and a potential first set of reactions to the film to go alongside it. So in this video, I'm going to be discussing the interview and all the details shared, breaking down the latest info from Nolan's upcoming film. Before I get into it though, if you want to keep up to date on any of my content surrounding Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, then don't forget to support this upload by giving it a like rating, subscribing to the channel, and turning on your notifications. But without further ado, let's discuss the new Christopher Nolan interview and details for The Odyssey. Starting with the new interview, Christopher Nolan admitted that he was in a state of anxiety in making The Odyssey. He said it's very nerve-wracking, you work on something a long time, you care a lot about it, but movies belong to the audience, so it's kind of in the eye of the beholder. It was a big undertaking, unquestionably, and I don't think I would have felt ready to take on this film until now. I wanted to make a very accessible movie, but the challenges were immense, requiring new engineering and choreography. There was the IMAX blimp system to encase and maneuver the enormous and loud camera, and castmates used mirrors to see each other around the equipment. Nolan continued by saying, "I'm very cautious, I see all things that will go wrong all the time. I'm one of those kinds of people. An outsider might look at your body of work and the ways you have innovated in the same way that the character in the movie wants to be the first to experience something, even if it's brutally hard. If you're really interested in movies and the history of movies, the one thing you see absolutely is that you have to take risks to succeed. The biggest risk of all is to play it safe. That's what consistently in mainstream movies doesn't work. The audience is looking for something new." I remember a conversation with Emma Thomas when I first showed her the script for Memento, structured backward and everything. She responded well with the script, but she felt like it was taking a lot of risk and a high burden. And I was able to say to her, "No, I can do this. There are a lot of filmmakers who can do it in a more straightforward way. Actually having something new to bring to the table mitigates the risk as it gives you a way to distinguish yourself." Then we tried to sell it to people who didn't get it, so she was completely right. But eventually it got to the audience and the audience appreciated that. The risk is in the intermediaries, in the finances and the studio. If you can get to the audience, I mean, I'm not taking any predictions for this movie, but in the past we've been well rewarded for having faith in the audience. I have strong feelings about how the story moves me in ethical terms, and I'm hoping that people have that feeling the way I did. As a filmmaker, you have to move in impulsive ways. I was looking to challenge myself with a completely different type of storytelling, and I was looking for a gap in the culture. I'm looking at Greek mythology, the Odyssey itself, and why hasn't it become a part of modern cinema? That's very exciting as a filmmaker, and then as you drill down, what is there to get your teeth into? The Odyssey, as with Oppenheimer, the reason these are great stories is that they have these resonances, these knotty problems and ethical dilemmas. It's about impossible situations, and that's what makes for a terrific story. In developing the Odyssey, Nolan also says that he read more translations of it than he cared to remember, and he realised that it is the Ur text. Essentially, it's in everything that he's done before. He said, "It's a story that's always been in the back of my head, received in a lot of different ways. One of my first memories of receiving a story is being at primary school in London, at probably 5 or 6, and seeing the older kids do a stage production. I remember the horse, I'm sure it was some cardboard concoction on a trolley, and then the sirens. It's not something I ever sat down and read. A lot of young people in this country seem very familiar with it, which is great but a little daunting." He then discussed his approach to the script of the film, saying that the approach to adapting it was similar to Oppenheimer in that there's a very academic history of it, but then there was also a lot of notes from memory. He said, "I tend to think in geometric terms and mathematical terms. I do a lot of diagrams, a lot of scribbles and doodles for months and months before I let myself write. Then, I suppose ironically, for somebody who's associated with non-linear approaches, I write in a very intensely linear way. I start on page 1 and just go forwards. He then talked a bit about IMAX and his inspiration through world building on a large canvas. He said there was a lot of time spent in my imagination as a kid, and I always loved that aspect of cinema, a movie that would just take you somewhere completely different. George Lucas's first Star Wars movie, as a kid, I think I saw it 12 times in the cinema. That for me was just the essence of this medium, to create an entire world that you could understand and live in that's absolutely different from everyday life. That's the great joy of movies. My memories of cinema as a kid are of this so much larger than life screen, and for me as an adult, you're trying to get back there. You're trying to put the audience on the deck of the ship with Odysseus, or be in the cave with the Cyclops. IMAX just gives you this grand canvas, and I love the format for that. Landscapes are amazing, but then faces are also just remarkable too. I would mercilessly put Cillian Murphy under the gaze of that camera, but there's something so rich, tactile and rewarding about seeing human faces shot close up in that way. One of the great satisfactions of my career has been being a part of an evolutionary process of a filmmaking system. My excitement for having finished the film entirely in IMAX is what other filmmakers might want to do with that. I just want to go see somebody else's film when they do it this way. He also discussed shooting on film and why he thinks it elevates the movies he makes. In talking about this, he said, "The reason I still shoot on film is because it's better in terms of representing the way the eye sees the world than any digital imaging system I've seen, and I've looked at all of them very carefully. Analog color is different to digital color, so for me, what's important is that you have the choice. But I've always edited my films digitally, and we absolutely use computer graphics as part of our visual effects pipeline. I embrace new technology all the time, but it tends to be sold to people at the expense of systems that might still be valid and viable. That's what I saw in my industry, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. In fact, we almost lost film." Speaking of inspiration, we did get some interesting info from Nolan surrounding his new film, and in particular, he revealed the movies that were his main inspiration for the film, and then also how he carries themes from movie to movie. Starting with the film that inspired the Odyssey, he said that Tarkovsky's Andrei Rublev made quite an impression on everybody, as the textures are pretty remarkable. He also said, "One of the films I screened as a bit of a flyer, like I didn't really know whether it would be relevant or not, was Kurosawa's Ran. It's shot very differently, but there's this relationship between the environment and the wind. Now that I look at our finished film, I think it was a huge influence." Now, Nolan has mentioned these films before, and hearing that they are a prime influence on the Odyssey is exciting when it comes to seeing how he visualizes the elements in the film. Essentially, the storms, the winds, and the elements that the characters look at as a sign. He did say before that this is how he is depicting the presence of the gods in his adaptation. And I personally do think that it's a more interesting way of presenting that, giving us a more grounded approach that we can relate to. He expanded on this, saying, "The greatness of the poem is such that you approach these things as if they are foreign and ancient, then as you explore them, they suddenly become stunningly relevant. Zeus's law, it's the golden rule, treat it as you would be treated, and with a theological underpinning in their world that you might be a god in disguise. For that world, it's very clearly basic survival. You leave the house for more than a couple days, you are by definition throwing yourself at the mercy of strangers. It's the only way society can function. That became very important to this film, and as soon as you start drilling down on it, you realise that nothing's changed. That's everything in terms of holding civilization together, or even defining civilization itself." The director further talked a bit about what he imagined for the film visually before shooting it. He said, "Two images carried with me for a long time. There was the horse about to be swept away in the tide, kind of listing over, like the last thing you think anybody would be inside. Although it was intended to be pulled into the city. I don't tend to think of images for purely imagistic purposes. Rather than doing the horse on a roller skate thing, that was all about wanting to present the horse in a way that an audience who's completely familiar with the story could see how it would work in a realistic sense." And then the other image was the idea of a soldier decapitating a statue. That became very important narratively. When it comes to the themes in the Odyssey, Nolan also discussed how there were parallels to his previous film, Oppenheimer. The interviewer asked him, "You once described Oppenheimer as someone who knew how to motivate others through the theatricality of his persona. Could you say the same for Odysseus, and were there a lot of parallels?" Nolan replied to this by saying, "When I finished the film, I was quite struck by that. Every film I do, I like to leave it with questions or unanswered themes that I might carry through to the next film. There's a lot of ideas of leadership, of mixed motivations, the flaws of people, the idea of where the best of intentions can go horribly wrong. Odysseus is a very complex character, a trickster, somebody who's smart and wily. In Star Wars terms, it's Han Solo, but Han Solo is not the hero of Star Wars, it's Luke Skywalker." Moving on, as I mentioned at the start of this video, there were a few new updates surrounding the film, and this includes confirmation of a casting, and also the first potential reactions to a press screening. Starting with the casting news, the first update clears up months of speculation about Elliot Page's role. For a while, the internet was convinced that Page might be playing Achilles, and some fans, including myself, floated around the idea that he could also be Elpenor, a smaller but memorable figure from the myth. But an upcoming edition of Empire magazine in the UK has now confirmed that Elliot Page is actually playing Sinon. If that name doesn't immediately ring a bell, then there's a reason. Sinon isn't actually a character in Homer's The Odyssey, and he appears in later Greek and Roman tradition, most famously in Virgil's Aeneid, where he's the Greek soldier who tricks the Trojans into bringing the wooden horse inside their walls. He's a manipulator, a storyteller, and a catalyst for one of the most iconic moments in all of mythology. So bringing him into this adaptation suggests the filmmaker is expanding the narrative beyond Homer's text, pulling from the wider mythological canon to give the story a broader and more cinematic scope. It's a bold choice from Nolan, and Page playing a character defined by deception and persuasion could add a fascinating new dynamic to the film. And yeah, all of those crazy rumours about Achilles were just completely false. But this now brings us to the second major update, and this includes potential early reactions to the film. These are reportedly from the press screening held at the Lincoln Square IMAX, and according to a Reddit user who spoke with 4 attendees at the event, the buzz is extremely positive. They say that Matt Damon is reportedly delivering one of the most attention-grabbing performances in the entire film, with the viewers calling him exceptional. And Hathaway, Robert Pattinson, and Tom Holland are all said to be excellent in the film as well, with Holland singled out by one attendee as Oscar-worthy. Samantha Morton, Corey Hawkins, Lupita Nyong'o, and John Leguizamo have also received strong praise from the screenings, suggesting the ensemble as a whole is firing on all cylinders. The score is further said to be another standout, with 2 viewers calling it Christopher Nolan's best work yet. And visually, the film seems to be packed with show-stopping moments, from the Cyclops encounter to the sirens, the Charybdis sequence, and a large-scale shipwreck scene. The screening reportedly ended with applause, and none of the 4 attendees mentioned any major flaws. Now, of course, as always, these early impressions should be taken with a grain of salt, as press screenings often generate enthusiastic first responses, and not to mention the sample size here is very small. But the important thing is that these reactions are coming from a legitimate screening that took place just a couple of days ago. We'll just have to see if these reactions do fall in line with the general consensus to the film, and when those official reviews do come out, I will be covering them here on the channel. But they were all the new updates and details revealed for Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. What do you guys think towards what the director said in his new interview, and based on everything you've heard, does it get you any more excited for the film? Let me know down below in the comment section. For much more videos and breakdowns, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like, rating, and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.